Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to week 6 of the year, right? A wrap up number 6, the first one of February. Wow, can't believe how long January lasted. It just didn't want to let go of us. But anyway, here we are, time to wrap up my week. We are deep into the swing of Pharaoh Feb. I'm so excited for all the events we have coming up. If you don't know about Pharaoh Feb for some reason, and you've been watching my channel and didn't know, Pharaoh Feb is Fantasy Romance February, where we're reading as many fantasy romances as we can. I, of course, will have the website linked down below if you want to know more. Some upcoming events that you might want to keep on your radar. This Tuesday at 5 p.m. Central, so that's taking place before the normal romance read-along. There's going to be a live show on my channel. I'm going to have some wonderful guests, including Jess and Reen's Romance, Crystal from Crystal's Bookish Life will be there. We'll also have authors Harriet Moore, and I believe Jeffy Kennedy is joining as well, which is really exciting. Haven't talked with her. And then on Valentine's Day, so next Sunday, I will be having an interview with Juliette on my channel. I'm so excited to be speaking with her. So just make sure that you are subscribed to the channel so that you don't miss any of those awesome things. And make sure to check out Pharaoh Feb's website as well as the Instagram handle, which is where a lot of this stuff is getting announced. So let's go ahead and dive into the weekly wrap up. We have 14 books to talk about, one of which was a DNF, but everything else was pretty interesting. I have one new 6-star to talk about. Otherwise, everything kind of was 3s and 4s. It wasn't my favorite week of reading I've ever had, but there was still some gems in here, so let's get going. The first one I want to talk about is The Queen of All That Lives by Laura Thalassa. I finally finished up what was this trilogy called? Like Fallen World, I think it was called. This is a post-apocalyptic, it wasn't really apocalypse, it's like dystopian. There wasn't a full-on apocalypse that happened. It was more just like, I guess there was some disease. I don't know. The point being, I gave this 3 stars. I was really into the first book in this series. I like the setup of Serenity being kind of sold off to this King Lazuli Montez so that he could have a bride, and then he would assist parts of the United States with having a peace deal. And so there's a lot of political drama. My biggest issue with this, and I talked about this like previously, is that there was so much hate to love all the way through. There was a lot of love on Montez's side and a lot of hate on Serenity's side. And I never fully believed by the end of this that she loved him the same way that he loved her. And that is something that just doesn't work for me. I love a hate to love. Mafia romances are some of my favorite things. I love the angst of it. I love the being drawn together and you just can't fight it anymore. Gets me really excited. But this just didn't work for me the way that I wanted it to, because there was just too much hate on Serenity's side and she never got over it. It was so frustrating. So when the HEA came around, I just didn't quite believe it because she was hating on Lazuli the whole time. So I just didn't believe that she loved him as passionately as he loved her, which was disappointing for me. Then I read Nightbloom by Juliette. This is the 3rd and final book in her Nightwing trilogy. This is a dragon fantasy, fated mates romance about this girl who, she's pretty timid. She's currently in a relationship with someone who is just not good for her at all. And then there is one of the Nightwing brothers who she is his fated mate. And so he's going to do what he's got to do to win her. These are quick novella-length books. They're about 150 pages each, and the series is delightful. And from what Juliette has told me, this is kind of a lead-up to one of her favorite series, which I think is the Vale of Stars series, which I'm very excited to read. I have the prequel novella already downloaded, and I'm ready to go because I'm trying to read as much of her books as I can before the interview next week, which I'm so excited for. So I ended up giving this 4-star. They were just also sweet. The biggest thing with novella length is that there's never enough story here for me. And especially with her starting this book being in a relationship with someone else, we have to like wait until that resolves itself before more is happening. And so that tends to be like, oh, I want them to be together for longer. So that's just it was still delightful. I loved all three of them. Then I read Unholy Intent, which I almost DNF'd. And I wish that I did because, again, as I was saying, I really get tired of hate to loves where they don't come around to each other sooner. This was the follow-up to Unholy Union, which was a forced mafia marriage situation. It was age gap. There was a lot of trauma happening in here. This girl was forced into this marriage with this guy she's been promised to for a very long time. Only her family never told her she was promised to him. So when her birthday comes around and she's supposed to marry him, she wasn't prepared for that. And so it's kind of a bummer, right? It's kind of a bummer. So yeah, I don't know. It just didn't work for me. I gave it a 3-star and I wish I DNF'd it. But I was so close to being done with it that I just pushed through. Also because I just recently put out a Mafia recommendation and I wanted, you know, to finish as many Mafia as I could before I put it in there. So yeah, just didn't quite work. I definitely would read some more Natasha Knight though, because I liked the setup of it. It just, again, was the heroine didn't get on his side. And to be fair with this one, I didn't really want her to be on his side because I didn't like him. He didn't win me over at all, which is important to me. But then I read Filthy by Serena Akeroyd. So I've read some Serena Akeroyd before and I've enjoyed her before. She usually writes more kinky type books. This one actually did have some elements of kink in it. Because our heroine is pretty naturally submissive in a really beautiful way. But the way this is set up, this is an age gap. She's a plus size heroine as well. And the mafia, the Irish mob, this is the Irish mob, wants her business. And they've been trying to buy it from her and she has refused to sell it. So they send Finn in and Finn coerces her into selling it. And because he's annoyed that she's taken so long to sell it, he also negotiates that he wants to spend a night with her. And she is super interested in this. So even though it may come across as like a coerced situation, she's actually really into it. And it kind of goes from there where the story starts out as like kind of an insta-lust situation, and they really get along in the bedroom, and it's just like banging all the time. And I was like, this is a pretty long book and they're already fucking, like maybe this isn't for me, you know. But then and this is why like I've been recommending this book, because they get married pretty early on in this story because he realizes that she's perfect for him in the way that they're compatible sexually, in the way that she's naturally submissive, in the way that she doesn't mind that he works for the mafia. All of these things she's okay with. And so he's like, I may never find someone more perfect for me than this. And she agrees because she really likes him too. And then something happens on their wedding day that makes it so they cannot have sex for a good portion of this book. And I was not expecting that. And what happened was this amazing look at what intimacy is, which I have enjoyed when it's explored in other contemporary romances, but I've never seen it done. Well, this isn't true. I have seen it done this way in like Cora Riley, you know, Twisted Emotions does this in a certain way too, but different because Nino doesn't know that he can feel emotion. Anyway, okay, not getting sidetracked by Cora Riley. This is the case of like, what intimacy can look like without sex. And Aoife, that's the name of the heroine, by the way. It's an Irish name, pronounced like Aoife, I think is how you pronounce it. It's spelt really weird when you read it. You'll see what I mean. And she is prepared for him to like be cheating on her while they can't have sex. And there is a point in this book where he says, he's like, there are other ways for us to be intimate than to have sex. And if you don't believe that of me, then I'm going to prove it to you. And I was like, be still, my beating heart. This beautiful alpha man is going to protect his woman, even from himself and from his desires and from her desires too, because this isn't just a case of she's like, honey, I'm sorry, I can't. It's a case of like, we both really want to be fulfilling ourselves sexually and we can't because of this reason. And so I highly, highly recommend this. This is technically considered a prequel to The Filthy Feckers by Serena Akeroyd, which I'm going to, well, we'll just jump to the next one because I started that one right away. I just didn't finish it immediately. So it's considered a sequel or a prequel, but it's a full-length book. And then the first one in The Filthy Feckers is Filthy Rich. And this is about one of the other brothers. And in this one, we have an arranged marriage at the beginning. This girl has been promised to him since she was 16. She's in an abusive home, very abusive home in the mafia, and she is promised to marry him. Now, he has studiously avoided being in the same place as her for this whole 2 years because he resents that he needs to marry a child, because this is an age gap story. He resents that he has to make this alliance, and so he's a very angry person. However, on their wedding day, she walks down the aisle and it's very clear to him that she has been abused. It's very clear. She is walking, favoring aside. He can see bruises under the makeup on her face. And when he lifts her veil, he can see that she has been beaten. And the instant rage that goes through him that this woman who has been promised to him, who is meant to be his family, would be treated that way instantly pisses him off. And that speaks to my sweet, dark romance heart, because he scoops her into his side at the altar of this church and he says, who did this to you? And she's like, doesn't matter. And he's like, you fucking bet it does. Who touched you? When they knew you were mine, I will end them. And she instantly melts into him and is like, it doesn't matter who did it. Like, I belong to you now, right? Well, and of course, it comes out that this is her father who's doing this. And he is like, you no longer will lay a finger on her. And there is a reason specific. I mean, her father will just beat her whenever, but there's a specific reason for this beating that happened just a couple days before her wedding, that we find out, you know, that she was obviously a little reluctant to marry this man. And her father was very angry that she would defy him in this way. But I really just like how their relationship came about too, because he's so sweet. And what is happening with my lighting here? There we go. So I just really appreciated this story as well. I really love some of the sweet things that he does for her. There's a scene where they Netflix and chill together, and without the chill, like, they Netflix together, and it is the cutest little date night that I've seen a mafia man do with his woman ever, and it just brought me so much joy. I was so happy. So I highly am recommending the Filthy Feckers series by Serena Akeroyd, and I plan to continue and read more of them as soon as I possibly can. Then I read The Duke Heist by Ridley. I had an e-arc for this book. This is about the Wicked Winchesters, I think. They are a found family ragtag group of people who are trying to get a painting back that belonged to their like surrogate adopted father and is meant to belong with them, and so they need to take on this certain duke to try to get it back. Well, this same duke, he is basically destitute because his father wasted all of his money, and so he needs to marry an heiress, and he needs to stay far, far, far away from the Winchesters, who need to get close to him to get this painting because they will not be good people for him to be around. I give this a 3.5 star, mostly because it was very difficult in the beginning for me to get into it, which is unfortunate because this book like starts with her kidnapping the Duke accidentally. So it starts really fun, and then it just got really bogged down in the middle for me, and I almost DNF'd it. I think maybe if I'd been able to focus more on it from the beginning, things might have went a little better. But we can't know that. So it was a 3.5 star for me. I believe this one is coming out soon. It did, like, there was some fun thievery and heist-like things in here, and there's quite the cast of characters. I believe that I would like another one in this series. Also, sometimes when I'm reading historical romance arcs, they're just harder for me to get into than when I have an audiobook and a physical book to read together. So that's something to keep in mind. Then I read Wilderness by Lynn Burke. Lynn Burke is an author that I discovered when I was looking for menages. This one isn't a menage, but that's how I found this series. So I really like survival stories and things that take place in like the Alaskan wilderness or the Canadian wilderness and stuff. So this one is about this billionaire who he's had some tough things happen in his life. And so he decides that he's going to go live in the wilderness. So he buys a cabin and some land in the wilderness and he's going to go live off the grid. Well, the day before he does that, he stops in this town, and the next morning he's supposed to meet his bush pilot who's supposed to take him out there. He meets this woman at a bar and they have a one-night stand. And then the next day, and they have like crazy sexual chemistry, like whew, off the rails. It's fantastic. Kind of angry sex, kind of just super passionate, amazing. The next morning he bails to go meet his bush pilot. The woman that he had the one-night stand with wakes up and realizes she's late for an appointment she needs to make. And it turns out that she's his bush pilot. So he had ditched her as a one-night stand only for her to show up late to the appointment and is his bush pilot. So it's kind of funny. So then they're kind of enemies a little bit, even though, come on, it was an honest misunderstanding and they literally were having a one-night stand. So how can you be angry that he like left afterwards? But it's the tension of it. And so she has kind of a prejudiced view of him, not just from the one-night stand part, but it's very clear that he's like a city boy who is purchasing all the things that he needs to go live in the wilderness. But this book actually takes place over kind of a longer period of time because he does run into some interesting situations while he's out in the wilderness. And then every so often she's supposed to come out with more supplies and things. And the first time that they see each other after him being there for a few weeks or a month, it is quite the scene. Like, ooh, mwah, it's amazing. There's also a bit of mystery going on because there is someone trying to take her business from her. There are definite trigger warnings in this book. There are trigger warnings for hunting. Like, I'm a girl from the country, like we hunt bears and wolves and deer and things. But if you're sensitive to that, know that we are killing animals for food and for safety in this book, but just wanted to be honest about it, even though it's not a trigger for me. We'll tell you. There also is assault and some, okay, there's some consensual, non-consent, rough things that happen consensually between the couple. Then there is assault things that happen between a third party in this book. So this is a dark book. This is dark. Then the next one is called Wildling by Lynn Burke. And there is this woman who, she's about 24 years old, and she is being courted by this guy who comes into town every few months. He's an older man, and he asks her to marry him. And she doesn't have much going on for her in this small town. Her parents are kind of drug addicts and drunks, and so she agrees to go with him. So she moves to his homestead in the middle of nowhere, actually getting dropped off by the bush pilots, who is the couple from the first book. And she agrees to go there with him, not knowing, number one, that he has a son who's 18 years old, and who he is horribly, horribly cruel to, just the things that he says to him and calling him names and things like that. And then also that this guy is going to be pretty abusive to her too. So she has gotten herself in way over her head because she didn't ask the right questions or think things through, and now she's trapped. And this is actually a love story between her and her stepson. So there is technically cheating in this book, so I want to warn you. This had a very, like, I don't want to call it wild, like Kay Webster, but it has that vibe, kind of. Also, yeah, so this was an older woman romance. It's one of those where, like, not, because no one should be cheated on, but also, it's one of those where, like, you don't really feel bad that this horrible man is being cheated on, right? You want both of these two people to figure out how to get away from him. Yeah. It was interesting. I really like how she tells the story. I gave both of those 4 stars, actually, because I couldn't put them down. Like, they were just so addictive, and it was a little bit on the darker edge of, like, dark romance for a lot of aspects, but I love the wilderness thing. I love we're trapped here. Yeah, but those ones were dark and twisty, so know that for sure. Then I read Radiance by Grace Draven. I gave this 4 stars. It's everything everyone said it was. It is a slow burn, friends to lovers, arranged marriage. This is a fantasy romance. I read this for Pharaoh Feb. It was delightful. It really, really was. I had a wonderful time reading it. It is a very long, slow burn though. So even though everyone told me that, and I was prepared for it, I still have to judge it based on what my own enjoyment and how I felt was it for. Also, the fantasy world wasn't really doing it for me. Like, it wasn't giving me what I want out of the fantasy world, and it was a slow burn. So until stuff in the relationship got going, it was a slog to get through. So I'm just being honest. And I think even some of my friends who are reading it that I've seen updates for, they felt that same way. But in the end, it's worth it, and I do want to read the sequel. I just don't know when I'll get to it, but it will happen because it was pretty delightful. And this couple, they're just such good friends. And they develop this deep, caring feeling for each other before anything else happens. And it was really pretty. Like, it was just really pretty. So I'm ready for Eidolon, I think is the sequel. And I will try to get to that soon. Then we get to our DNF. So I DNF'd Desolation Road. I'm sorry, I tried, but now it's 2 out of 4 of the series that I have DNF'd. I just can't connect with the characters. I wanted to. I was promised really good things with this one. But even Absinthe, who I want to love him so much, and even the sexy times of this book, just couldn't keep me in. Like, I wanted it to work. There's like kinky elements in this. This is a motorcycle gang, or I mean a motorcycle family, MC who tries to do good as best they can. They also all have abilities that were kind of like they've had since they were children, and yeah, it's a whole thing. This is the 4th book in the series, and I just don't think Christine Feehan is like here for me anymore. You know, like, I just don't think that I'm meant to read her anymore. Part of it is that it is 3rd person, and I just don't connect that well with 3rd person as much as I used to, and I don't know. I don't have anything. I just couldn't. So I DNF'd it at 50%. I gave it until 50%, okay? Whereas the other one, I DNF'd it at 20% because it was just going too bonkers, and I was like, I'm done. We're done. So that happened. Then I read The Rogue Not Taken by Sarah MacLean. I read this for my book club with Crystal, the Rake Appreciation Society. Which we will be doing on February 27th. The book club portion will be on Crystal's channel, and then the interview with Sarah MacLean will be on my channel the next day, which is the 28th. So excited for that. This book is about Lady Sophie, who begins this book by getting herself into some trouble with society. She pushes her brother-in-law into a fountain because she catches him cheating on her sister. And so, yeah, she pushes him into a fountain, and then she decides to make a run for it and decides to go back to the place that she grew up as a child and try to recapture some of the magic of that time. So she runs away, and the carriage that she stows away on is the carriage that belongs to King, the Marquis of Eversley. This is also someone she's had a run-in with. She's not a big fan of him. This is a hate to love. It's not a Sarah MacLean book if it doesn't get a little bit bonkers, doesn't get a little bit sassy, doesn't get a little bit crazy. It was a real fun time. I did give this one a like 3.75, rounded up to a 4 stars on Goodreads. I can't wait to talk about it more in our live show. And I'm diving into A Scot in the Dark very soon. Can't wait. Then I read The Last Wolf by Maria Vale. Very excited for this. Maria Vale is going to join one of my read-along lives later in the month, so this is going to be fun. I have had this book for a while, and I wanted to give it a go. So this one is about a wolf named Silver, and she is at the bottom of her pack social order, and she has the chance for a decent mate and a better life with this stranger who stumbles along. And so this stranger is called a shifter, which I believe means that he's half human, half wolf. And then his name is Tiberius, and she decides to risk everything for him and her to like get back into the pack, I guess. I don't know. So you can see how confused I am. And that's my biggest issue with this book, is that I didn't understand what was happening. This is a pretty short book. I really liked Silver. I was very confused by pack dynamics. There was many alphas and different hierarchies within this group. And the thing is that it's told from the point of view of Silver. It's first person point of view from her point of view. But I think it's like first person present tense. Yeah, it's first person like present tense, which is a tough tense to get used to as well. And because she is a wolf and already knows all the things about their pack and everything, I feel like things weren't explained as well as they would be if this was like dual POV. Like if we could have had Tiberius's point of view as well, so that we could see him questioning what's going on. I, as a reader trying to get into this world, would have appreciated that in. The pack, there was some really fun parts about it, like the baby pups, and the crazy things about like when a wolf is pregnant, they're usually pregnant with 2 to 3 babies at once. And once they reach a certain point of pregnancy, the wolf pups will begin changing intermittently. And so they have to strap the woman up to an ultrasound. And for the last like couple weeks of her pregnancy, anytime the pups are changing, the wolf has to change from wolf to human so that their body doesn't get rid of what's inside them. Like if it's not matching, like, I don't know how that works. That was crazy. That was the magic part of it. So I don't know. I don't know if I want to continue with the series. There was also a lot of time jumps. There was also just, I didn't understand what the overall plot was to this book. It was very atmospheric. It definitely felt wintry, and again, there were aspects that I loved, but I just didn't feel connected to anything in it. So it just wasn't for me. And then it also wasn't as sexy as it could have been either. So all of those things stacked together, it didn't roll for me. So I gave this one a 3-star. It probably was more like a 2.5-star for me, but I went with a 3 because it had a lot of potential, but it just didn't get there for me. Then I read Dirty Kisses by Kenya Wright. This is the first book in the Lion and the Mouse series. I was very excited to try this book. I've heard Steph from Steph's Romance Book talk about this. I've seen it on quite a few Mafia romance recs. This is an interracial Bratva romance. We have this woman living in Brooklyn. She's kind of is with this group of people that is her blood family, as well as some kids that they have just grown up together and formed this tight-knit group, and they do some dangerous work. So they actually clean money for the mob. So she is an artist, and she has an art gallery where she sells art, but it's really, she is an artist, but it really is a front for cleaning money for the mob. And when the most dangerous, the most wanted Russian lion, Kasim, I don't know how to say his name, she is tasked with laundering a large amount of money for him. And they also have some serious insta-lust for each other. Like, it is hot up in here. They basically know they're going to end up fucking each other, but they don't want to fuck up the job along the way. So this is only the first part of, I think it's a pretty long series. I don't know if I believe the characters might change up at certain points. There, excuse me, there are these murders happening. There is a like serial killer going around that seems to be targeting people within their organization as well. So there are also those elements to contend with as we go. It was really, really good. The one thing I will say with this, so I loved the story. I gave this a 4-star. It was good. I listened to the audio of this, and I could only listen to the chapters by the man because the female narrator was just bad. Like, it was bad. I tried speeding it up and slowing it down. Her inflection was not great. The accent she was trying to do for Cassium, like, he's Russian, and it was like a French one she was doing. Like, it was painful, guys. It was painful. I have heard it done much better. Much better. And I'm sure that would be difficult, but it was just awkward and bad. And so it actually was making me really angry. And so I sat down with the copy in my Kindle and I would listen to the male narrator. And then when it switched to hers, I would read it. And then I would turn the narrator back on. Like, it was the only way I could get through it because it was bad. And if you go to the Goodreads, or not the Goodreads, if you go to the Amazon reviews for it too, you'll see that, where they're like, this book was fantastic. The female narrator, not great. Like, it says in all of them. So I'm definitely not the only one who thought that way. But I definitely want to continue the series, but I probably won't waste my money on the audiobooks this time. I'll just buy the books to read because the story really has me intrigued. I wanted to read this after I saw Steph's interview with Kenya Wright, and I just really enjoyed listening to her talk about where her inspiration came from. So then the last one I want to talk about is Dancing with Danger by Kerrigan Byrne. This comes out this Tuesday, and I got an ARC for it. The Good Sisters books. This is the series that connects to the Victorian Rebels, and it's the book that A Dark and Stormy Night and Seducing a Stranger, they're the same book, and then it's a crossover into the Good Girls. So this one was a fun little romp. The book got delivered to my Kindle and I immediately started reading it. I was like, I need it. This is about Mercy Good. All the sisters have like names like that. And then Raphael, who is a smuggler and a crime lord, and he happens to be at a crime scene that Mercy shows up at. This woman that she was trying to help leave her husband, because he's an abusive man, she is found murdered. And so it just so happens that Raphael is hiding in a closet there. And so he claims not to have done the murder, but in fact he hid in the closet when the police showed up, and then they both get arrested together. However, he escapes from the paddy wagon, but not before he kisses her before he leaves. So they have this kind of hate to love, but mostly he's really impressed by her because she's very smart. She wants to solve this murder of her friend. Detective Carlton Morley is also her brother-in-law, and so he definitely like indulges her sometimes when she has theories about cases and stuff like that, and I really enjoyed that. So this was a pretty short one. It's only 215 pages, so I don't want to say too much. My downsides to this one, and I do share it more clearly in my Goodreads review for this because, you know, I reviewed an arc of this and everything, is that it all takes place in the space of, I think, a weekend. That's what I was getting out of it. And so it was a big case of insta-love. Like, we were dropping the L word very quickly. Whereas previous books in the stories, there was like history between the characters before the main part of the story happened. So when everything gets escalated quickly, you believe it because they already have these connections started. Whereas with this one, they have met one time, but then they meet at this and Raphael is like, I have to have you. And I mean, I like that. It's hot. But then we're saying I love you by the end of that night. And I was just like, Kerrigan, Kerrigan, come on, honey, give me some more time. So that was my feeling about this one. It still was a fun story. If you don't mind a little bit of insta-love, it's great. It's still, this one was more like a mystery than a lot of the other ones. Like, there was a case to solve and things to find out about that. And so it was really fun. And there you go. Those are all the books that I read in this week. And currently, I won't list them all, but I'm in the middle of 6 books right now because I just couldn't land on a fantasy romance to read next. And I'm also doing the long read of A Court of Wings and Ruin, and so I'm just in the middle of everything. But thank you so much for watching this. Again, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell if you'd like to know when I upload. Make sure you check out channel memberships if you want to support what I do here. It would mean so much to me if you check that out. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!